Morning guys, so it's another cold, wet, miserable spring day. The chance of starting the new Grow on pond down the bottom would be a fine thing, but I ain't going to be out in this doing it, so we'll just have to wait. Fish in the main pond all seem happy now since fluke treatment. Well, not happy. Water temperature's about 11 degrees at the moment, so they're all kind of moping around like myself. But on this video, moving on from last week's video, which was top tips of when it comes to building your pond, this video is going to be about top tips on how to maintain and run an effective pond. As of today, the 1000 subscriber giveaway is closed. So next week's video I'll be making that draw, so if you entered, be sure to check that out. So yeah, I'm going to get myself into the filter house where it's nice and dry, and let's go through some top tips on how to maintain an efficient pond, and also there'll be some top money saving tips thrown in there as well. So let's get on with it. Right, I tell you what, it's not much warmer down here. I think the pond temperature's about 11-12, but hey ho, let's crack on with it. So yeah, we're going to start looking at a couple of items that you're going to need from day one, from when you start your pond off. And the first one is water test kit. So there's a few available. Obviously this one, Plenty Labs, there's API, there's HANA test kits, which are a bit more expensive. But all pretty much do roughly the same things. I would advise against using the little test strips. They're good to give you a little here, there or thereabouts reading, but to get a pretty much accurate reading, you do want one of the liquid test kits. And when you first start up your pond, you're probably going to be wanting to be testing every few days, every week or so, just to make sure that your pond's going through the nitrogen cycle correctly. Once your pond's more established, you won't need to test as often, especially things like ammonia and nitrites, because you'll know that you'll have those under control. Yeah, but without having a test kit to hand, you won't know whether your pond's actually gone through the nitrogen cycle. So yeah, definitely get hold of one of those. The other most important piece of kit that you are going to need is a microscope. Now, whenever you get any problems with your ponds and you go on, say, the Facebook groups or whatever, which I try and avoid, the first two things that you're going to be asked are, what are your water parameters and have you done any scrapes? Doing scrapes can seem a little bit daunting at first, but there's plenty of videos out there on YouTube that give you an idea of what to do, and also put a picture up there as well of the kind of things that you're going to be looking for on a microscope. Obviously things that you're not going to be able to see with the naked eye, so when you do see your fish flashing, flicking around in the water, the first point of call is going to be to test your water and to get a mucus scrape off the fish and to look at it under the microscope. So definitely two pieces of kit worth getting in your arsenal for when you have a koi pond. Right, the second bit of advice that I want to give with regards to running a koi pond, and it's something that a lot of people do overlook or don't think it's that important, is quarantine. Quarantining new fish that you're going to be adding into your main pond. Now, when you get fish from any dealer, there's always that slight chance that there's going to be something wrong with that fish. Now, if you put it into a quarantine system on its own for a few weeks, you can monitor that fish and make sure it's got no nasties, nothing that you're not expecting. Last thing you really want to be doing is getting a brand new fish, putting it in your main pond, which has got another 10, 15, 20 fish in, and that new fish introducing some into your main pond that's going to affect your whole pond, and then you are going to have a much bigger problem. A quarantine setup doesn't need to be expensive, doesn't need to be massive. You know, if you're buying only small fish, you can get away with just a few 100 litres, just some kind of something similar to an IBC tank that a lot of people tend to use for quarantine. But it's definitely not something that should be overlooked, because trust me, if you get a fish in and that spread something into your main pond, you could end up wiping out your whole pond. And there have been a few cases recently of people getting fish from certain suppliers and having nasties introduced into their main pond, and it has wiped out their ponds. So definitely consider getting some kind of quarantine system, because again, you won't regret it in the long run. As you've seen in my other videos, I've got the temporary blue paddling pool that's been set up at the top of the garden. I've had that for a couple of years now, and I've used that to introduce new fish into. You can get smaller ones of those, so definitely worth looking. Just have a look around on eBay, on Amazon. You'll definitely find something that meets your needs. Okay, so next thing we're going to look at, or next couple of things we're going to look at, are things that can save you money in the long run when running a koi pond. And first thing on the list is this stuff, sodium bicarbonate, otherwise known as KH buffer. Now you can buy KH buffer from your local dealer. It's going to cost a fair bit. This tub, 10 kilo tub, you can get for around about £20. If you're anything like me, I've got 0 KH coming out of my tap water, so I have to buffer my system every week with about 350 grams of bicarbonate soda. So that 10k tub will last me quite some time, whereas I'll probably pay £20 for a fraction of the amount of KH buffer, where theoretically it does pretty much the same thing. Now it is important to monitor your KH and to have a steady level. Around about 6 to 8 DKH, I think, is the target figure that people want to go for. But what KH does, it helps maintain a steady pH and reduces the risks of having serious pH swings, which can be very detrimental to your fish. So it is important to buffer your KH and to test your KH on a weekly or 2 weekly basis. So yeah, definitely look at getting a 10 kilo tub of bicarbonate soda. That will save you money in the long run. Okay, and another thing worth shopping around for when it comes to products that we use in our pond is hydrogen peroxide. Now Kasuri, I think 1 litre of this costs around about a tenner. Now if you go online, you can get a 5 litre tub for around about £20, if not less, and it would be double the strength as well as this stuff. So things like hydrogen peroxide, potassium permangate, a couple of other things out there. Always look into whether you can get it elsewhere cheaper without paying koi tax, of course. It's not very often we have to use hydrogen peroxide, mainly when we do a PP treatment on the pond, but yeah, it is definitely worth shopping around for that kind of stuff as well. One other thing that you might have in your arsenal, in your filter house, is koi sedate. Again, another product that can be found elsewhere cheaper in the form of clove oil. Just standard clove oil that you can get from your chemist. I think we use it for toothache, things like that. But 2 drops per litre is enough to sedate your koi, and it's a fraction of the price of Kasuri sedate. So if you do need to sedate the koi for any reason, just get over the counter clove oil. Again, that will save you some money. Right, moving on, I'm going to share with you a couple of things that I do to help save you money with regards to running costs. Now we all know the extortionate price that we're having to pay for electric, so many ponds, when we're getting through quite a few hundred of watts of power, anything that we can do to save money on the electricity bill is going to help. Now the first thing I recommend is by getting variable speed pumps or variable wattage pumps. Obviously the clue's in the title. The slower you run your pumps at, the less power they're going to be using. Obviously throughout the summer, where you're going to be feeding heavily, you probably are going to want them running at the maximum that you can have them running at. But especially in the autumn, winter, early spring, there's no need to be filtering the water as much as you would be over the summer. So definitely look at turning your pumps down over those times of year. I definitely turn mine down by at least 30%, 40%. Monitor the water as well with a water test kit, and it doesn't have any bad effects. So there's one thing you do to save money: keep them pumps turned down when you don't need them running at the max. And the next thing is your UV light. Now for a good few years I was running my UV 24 hours a day, and the last couple of years especially, I've been toying with that. When I finished building the new pond and I put the new UV in, I started off at 12 hours a day throughout the day, and then over the course of summer I reduced it by an hour over the next couple of weeks, and I got it down to running for 6 to 7 hours a day. So I was only using it a third of the time that I was using it before, so obviously it's going to cost me a third of the amount of money or the amount of electric by running it only for 6 or 7 hours. If your pond's in shade for part of the day or a lot of the day, you're definitely not going to need that UV running 24 hours a day. So if you haven't got timer sockets or smart sockets, just get yourself a bog standard plug-in timer and have a go at just reducing the amount of time that you've got the UV running. You'll soon know if you need to have it on more, because your water will start going green. But if you just start gradually reducing it down and your water stays clear, you're going to be saving yourself money. Definitely not worth having it on 24 hours, but definitely worth having a look at. Right, so one last thing when it comes to running equipment on your ponds and in your filter house: air pumps. Now, air pumps, we all know, are definitely very important on your pond. It's the way that oxygen gets put back into the water and CO2 gets released. Now, a lot of people are mistaken in thinking that the actual air bubbles coming from the bottom from the air stone is the thing that's putting oxygen into the water. It's not. What is actually happening there is that when the air bubbles hit the surface of the water, it's the displacement of water that is getting rid of the CO2 and putting oxygen back into your pond. Obviously, with warmer weather and when it gets to 30+ degrees in the summer, fingers crossed, you're going to want to pump as much air into the pond as possible, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to add an extra air pump. There's a way that you can do with regards to using your existing pumps and having a spray bar. It's becoming more and more popular now, having a spray bar on a pond. You're obviously using a water pump to filter your water, to pump the water around your pond, so why not make use of that? There's a video here of how spray bars actually work and what these are doing. They're actually making more surface movement on the pond, so it is converting more, well, removing more CO2 and putting more oxygen into the pond. I've got the same system on both my aquariums in the house. I haven't got any air pumps on either of those aquariums. They basically just rely on the return of water across the top, return of water from the filtration across the top of the water, creating surface movement and therefore transferring the CO2 out and putting oxygen in. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to put another air pump on your system if you feel that you need more air. Definitely look at a spray bar system. Right, there's one last thing that I want to talk to you about, and that's what things you need to keep in stock on your shelf, any treatments, that kind of thing. Definitely recommend keeping a koi first aid kit in. There is going to be a time when you need to treat your koi for knocks or scrapes or whatever it is, so that's definitely worth keeping in. Relatively cheap, so it's not going to bust the bank. Second thing is to keep in, I would recommend, would be pond salt. Again, if your koi's ever have any kind of knocks to them, salt is pretty much my always first thing that I'll go to in the aid of their recovery. Another relatively cheap thing to keep in is aquaflavin. Again, it's another treatment or an antiseptic that you put in the pond water or quarantine bowl when you've got a bit of a knock on a fish. That alongside salt would definitely give a koi a head start. Things like flute treatments, they are relatively expensive. It's not something that I could probably afford to have on my shelf, just sitting there. Luckily for me, my dealer's only up the road, so if I do need to go to a flute treatment, I can get my hands on it pretty much straight away. But if you haven't got a dealer around by you and it is something that you're going to have to wait a few days for, I would definitely recommend keeping a flute treatment of one description in stock, because the sooner you act on parasites, the better. You don't want to leave it for a few days or a week. As soon as you see that you've got a problem, you're going to want to hit it straight away. So yeah, if you haven't got a dealer around by you I would keep some flute treatment on the shelf, but because it is relatively expensive. And one other thing I'd keep in stock all the time is potassium permanganate, PP, used to treat trichodina, as well as a few other things. Can be used to put in the pond or used as a dip that some people tend to do. That is relatively cheap, so, and it comes in powder form. So yeah, definitely keep some PP in stock as well. Okay, and one last thing that will probably save you money and probably save your fish as well if you have any problems, and that is generic treatments. You get these bowls from certain companies that say parasite treatment. Avoid them at all costs. They're not going to work. They might knock them back slightly, but you're just going to end up with the same problem in a week or two. They are relatively cheap, and that's the reason why, because they don't really work. So yeah, generic koi treatments I would steer well out of the way of. If you do have any parasite problems, you want to get targeted treatments for your fish to help them stand any chance in recovering from those parasites and those problems. So yeah, generic treatments, avoid at all costs. Right, and that's it for this one, guys. A relatively short one. Just wanted to share a few more tips with you on how to save your money and things like that, and how to run a successful koi pond. So there you have it. Next week's video I'm going to be doing the draw for my 1000 subscriber giveaway. So yeah, stick around for that. That is now closed for entries, and I will say when I do the draw, you'll have to watch the video and contact me via my email to claim your prize, because there are a few scams out there when it comes to giveaways where apparently you get a so-called message from the channel owner saying you've won, and etc, etc. So just to eliminate any of that, I will be announcing the winner on the video next week. So yeah, we'll leave it there for this one, and until next time, thanks for watching.